Well, hello again. We're back with another story. Customer brought this 65 Strat in. It's had a lot of changes made to it. The biggest thing is it had been refretted, and they thinned the fingerboard down quite a bit. These have the thin fingerboard. You notice how thick it is on the ends and how thin it is in the middle. They actually changed the radius to 12-inch radius on the fingerboard. When they resawed for the fret slots, they actually sawed into the neck several places. The fret job is actually horrible. They put jumbo frets in it, mowed them down really low because of the poor leveling job. And this is what he was left with. This it is a 60s Strat, this L series. Yep, see? He's had lots of love over the years. This was his main guitar for quite some time. This actually comes from the file of, how did I get talked into this? But anyway, what we're going to end up doing, the plan is to replace the fingerboard. Originally I thought about just refretting it, but it's been mangled to the point that that's impossible to do a good job on it. So again, like I say, the plan is to make a new fingerboard for it. We're going to try to reutilize all the inlays. This is a crossover guitar from the CBS purchase of Fender. So it has pearloid dots in the front of the fingerboard. On the side, we actually still have the clay dots. So I don't know how well I'm going to be able to salvage those, but if necessary, I can make replacements for those. If I have to replace one of them, I'm going to replace them all to be consistent. So there you go. We've got an idea of what we're going to try to do. So this is going to be a tough one. Okay, we're going to show you some of the specialty tools we have here for this job. This is something I stole from the Fender Custom Shop several years ago. I saw it in a factory tour, and one of the technicians was using it to true up a fingerboard, and it seemed like a really good idea. So what you've got is a box, your neck bolts go through here to hold the back end of the heel in. Of course, you got a straight edge, a straight center line. Up here, this keys into one of the tuning machine holes and lines the neck up perfectly in the box. You've got a little cutout here to allow for a Strat style headstock. And the idea is you put your neck in this and you actually have it, the fingerboard or the neck straight, and your sanding blocks fit in it and right up and down it squarely, and it can't twist, so it ends up coming out true as far as radius wise. It can't twist and it can't deflect. Okay, so what I did was I took a fingerboard blank and I fastened it in this box upside down. I made a convex 7 1/4 inch radius sanding block, to cut the inside curve on the fingerboard that matches the neck. Actually, I'd already made a piece of Formica here that I had put a 7 1/4 inch radius on to use underneath it. So then I fastened the concaved fingerboard blank to the top of the masonite with double-sided tape, then fastened it down the box in this position, basically. Then again used the sanding blocks to sand the radius in the top of the fingerboard. So what we've ended up with is a slightly oversized, slightly overly thick, I want to have some room here to work, fingerboard blank. This was a regular 1/4 inch thick rosewood blank. So there you are up to this point. I didn't show you anything else up to this because basically what it amounted to was just hours of sanding. So anyway, we're to this point. I'm about to drag out a tool that's not seen daylight for probably since the early 90s, from my guitar building days. I'm going to get my fret slotting jig out and clean it up and get it working again. I will actually have to make a radius guide for it that's 7 1/4 inches to cut the nut slots and the fret slots the proper radius. I'll be back. It's been a couple hours. I thought I'd catch up here on what's going on. First, I'll show you my old LMI fret slotting tool. It's this fancy miter box with a lot of things. You can see here where I've made my radius guide to stop my blade. Okay, that allowed me to set the depth of where I wanted it. And if you look here on our fingerboard, you can see that the slots do not go all the way through. See, they don't go all the way through. Now the fingerboard's a little thicker than normal, so we've got a little bit of leeway there, and I can clean the fret slots up some more when I'm finished. But there we have a roughed out fingerboard. We've had a little bit of a problem. I kind of expected this. Also, we have abandoned the idea of salvaging the original position markers on the front of the fingerboard. We are saving the clay dots on the side, but since they had cut through the fingerboard for all the frets when they did the refret, the fingerboard of course is coming off in little sections. So this is taking a little while. So what I'm doing is actually heating the fingerboard up and peeling these sections off of it. As usual, big surprise. So carry on. Here we are back in the neck box. At this point we've managed to get all the fingerboard off, and we've been cleaning things up. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, we couldn't reuse the inlays from the front of the fingerboard because they've been sanded down too thin by the previous refret. When they sanded this fingerboard down to a 12-inch radius, those inlays were toast. So anyway, so you can see what's going on here. You can see a good bit of sawdust piled up here from sanding. Some of the fret ends are starting to disappear here where we've managed to sand some of them out. We've had a kick-up problem back here that we've actually removed some of. We had another problem right through here when the guitar was originally built. There was a hump here. Like I said, we got rid of this little hump up here. It's too bad the fret slots here didn't sand out. Some of them did. They're a lot smaller than they were before. I'm not going to take extra wood off this neck just to get rid of those. It's unnecessary. I don't want to thin it down any more than I have to. So we're looking really good here right now. The idea here is to actually just get the fingerboard surface trued up so we've got a good glue joint area. And speaking of which, I actually have a scrap here off of the fingerboard end once I got my fret slots and everything in it. So check this out. Look at that glue joint. You can't ask for anything better than that. That's all done because of this box. Let me show you how this works. There's no way this block can twist or rock. So it's forced to give you a good true radius on that. So thank you, Fender, for that tip. I terminally borrowed that one. So anyway, moving on. Well, we're all ready for glue up. We've got our fingerboard rough cut. It's a little bit oversized all around. We have our inlay holes drilled. We have a couple locating pin holes here and locating pin holes here to line up the new fingerboard to the neck. All we have to do is spread some glue here and get it together. So, let the good times roll. I thought I'd catch up here on our progress on our vintage Strat neck. We have the fingerboard on. It's been trimmed. That was a bit tricky. So was this end. But we're all trimmed up here. We have our inlay holes all drilled on the side. Actually right now we're just waiting on replacement inlays here for the front. They ought to be here this week. We'll get those in. We'll get it on the neck jig, get the fingerboard all trued up, make sure we don't have any issues. We're going to be using C.P.R vintage Fender style frets that will actually allow me a little bit more leeway. Years ago we actually had to file down the thickness of the tang to fit the slots to keep them going through the fingerboard. C.P.R has actually made a shorter tang now, so that's going to be very handy for us. So as I say, we're moving along here. We've got a few more hours involved. The thing is, you know, Fender did this probably in a matter of minutes with jigs and so on and everything, but we're doing it one time by hand. Update time. Well, we have all of our inlays in. Our fingerboard's been trued up and leveled. The fret slots have been cut to proper depth. I actually cut them to 62 thousandths deep from the top of the fingerboard. The fret slots have been chamfered properly. We're ready for frets. We've got our side dots all in. You can see we're ready. I mentioned having a little trouble up here trimming up this end of the fingerboard. Let me show you why. This is something I ran into and working on old guitars really kind of surprises me occasionally. If you check down here, this is flat. As we come up, we start getting round. When we get up here, we're real round. This is nowhere near flat. So, you know, trying to file and sand this curved area in and blend it in right was pretty difficult. It'd be bad enough with something flat, but when we've got something rounded like that, it just added just a whole nother level of difficulty to it. So anyway, like I said, we're waiting for frets. If frets get here, we're going to get them in and we're going to get this little puppy on the way. We have our fret wire radiused and the tang has been shaved thickness wise. I'm going to be pressing and gluing these frets in. It's something I do a lot, the way I do fret work. It allows you to refret guitar several times if necessary without damaging the fingerboard slots. That's something I prefer. So like I say, we're all radius, we're ready to start trimming frets, we're ready to start putting frets in. So on we go. It's been a quiet afternoon in the shop, so I've managed to get all the frets in and the fret ends trimmed. And that's the way it's supposed to look. Oops, slid a little bit. This surrogate body is actually meant to be on the neck jig, not on a bench, but still made it easier to work on it. So here we are. Our frets in and trimmed. We're ready to stick this back on the neck jig, finish up our fret work, but that's not going to be done until after I respray the back of the neck and clean a few things up. We're going to get the neck all put back together here. Most of the finish is worn off the neck to start with, so we're going to stabilize that. So there we are, off to the home shop for some lacquer. It's a couple days later and we're back in the shop here with the neck. We still have to unmask the fingerboard, but we're going to wait till after all the sanding and rubbing out is done from the touch-up work. We had to respray some up here. Handy little airbrush. The collar on the back of the neck is actually blended pretty well. Again, that was some airbrush work here. The idea was not to completely make it match because he had some natural wear here on the back of the neck, and we're going to actually do a satin finish on the back where he had worn through all the finish. The finish is completely gone basically from here to here. It had raw wood. It was actually looking pretty black. To say, some of our collars here blended in really well. So we're going to sand this down and clean up, blend it all in, unmask it, clean up the fingerboard, get our nut in, get the tuners back on, get the neck back on my surrogate body, and we're ready to finish up our fret work. So, moving on. Well, 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 look what we have here. We have the Strat finished. Spent about another 4 hours on it here. Reassembling the guitar, we did the fret dress, all the setup on that. So we're all good to go. We have new fingerboard, new nut, new frets, new inlays, new finish on the back of the neck. To recap back here, we've got new pots, new 5-position switch, new pickup covers, new knobs. Been a bit of work. We're going to have to sit down and total up everything on this. This is going to be a bit of a job. Long one. I'm sure there's at least 15 hours in this guitar. But hey, it's a 65 Strat. It's playable again. And we win. So, there you go. I'm going to give the customer a call, give him the good news, and we'll see how long it takes him to beat his way to the door. So, until next time, play nice.